What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net. I am one of your hosts, Daniel Terry, and with me, as always, is Jonathan Beatty. How are you doing today?
It was really nice having you actually getting to do all the heavy lifting, you doing the interview, and it was kind of fun, you know. Sometimes with this show, something that happens over on Discography Discussion just happens to magically align for an interview over here.
Yeah, it was kind of fate because there could not have been a better time. I was so familiar with all the material at that point. And because, I think we did the Discography Discussion 3 or 4 weeks ago. It really wasn't very long ago. And so whenever it came across the desk that hey, Aborted's doing press, do you want to talk to him? We were like, yeah, absolutely. And John was like, yeah, that's all Dan.
Yeah, it was just one of those things for me where I kept thinking, some people might be like, oh, you guys only talk about to hardcore bands, metalcore bands, and somewhat as of recently, some not so heavy bands and so forth. But I think, getting a band like Aborted, that's definitely not in my wheelhouse. I know they are a newer band. I think they're came out, 99? So I guess they're almost celebrating 20 years now, I guess, at this point. So I guess they're not newer, but in the genre itself, I would say they're one of the newer bands that's kind of at the level that they are worldwide.
Considering the bands that would be considered their peers, they are technically a newer band. Everything that they've really put out other than their first release was after 2000. So for this style, they're one of the very few torchbearers of death metal, in the 2010s, 2019s, all that. And they still bring it. I actually, part of the reason I sound so terrible on tonight's recording is because I actually went and saw Aborted last night in Indianapolis. And it was kind of an intimate show. There was probably about 100 people there, but they brought it, man, as if they were playing to 5,000 people,
Sing along to every word, did you?
Every single word, yeah. That's how you can tell I have no voice. But no, it was definitely a lot of fun getting to do the interview with Stefano, who's a relatively newer member of the band, which was actually more interesting to me because, for him, he's filling in for a band that is massively more popular overseas than they are maybe here in the U.S. But to take on that burden of hey, I'm going to join this band, and they already have all these albums, so I have to learn all these songs. Maybe they don't have to learn everything. I think he even said it's well, you have to learn the set list first.
Yeah, 90 minutes.
Yeah, and that's rough. 90 minutes of an old school death metal or a brutal death metal show, that's an endurance round. With the amount of energy that these guys had, one thing that I had mentioned, I brought my co-host Joe with me from Discography Discussion for the show, and I couldn't help but mention how energetic they were because, when I went and saw Cannibal Corpse, it's not that they weren't energetic. Both bands put on a vastly different type of show. But, with Cannibal Corpse, they all just kind of get up there and it's a big deal because they're such an established act, it's here in the United States. So, Corpse Grinder gets up there and they all, they circle bang their hair the entire time they're playing. And it's almost like seeing real life Death Clock. Whereas with Aborted, it was what we got energy wise was much more akin to what you would get out of a metalcore or a deathcore band. Much more crowd interaction. They even did a wall of death at the end of the set, which I was not expecting at all. I'm standing there with all my merch and stuff in my hands, and he's like, "All right, all the way to the back of the room," and I'm just like, "Oh, here we go," But it was definitely a lot of fun. I appreciate death metal vocalists that throw some jokes out there, some one-liners, just make the show a lot of fun. And the amount of crowd interaction he was able to get out of 100 people in the middle of Indianapolis was great. A band that starts off playing clubs in Belgium, and here they are overseas, and they're still pulling in new fans today. They were incredible. Their sound was fantastic for where they were. It was kind of weird too because the way the sound was run, they didn't really have any amps out on
were they using
on
profilers?
Stage or anything. Yeah. Okay. Which actually led to kind of a superior sound mix than what I'm used to.
Yep. It's one of those things, having been to a lot of shows recently to do a lot of these interviews and so forth. We talked to Hands Like Houses, which is coming out soon enough, but they're from Australia and they have Kempers. You see everyone pretty much is switching to Kempers or Axe Effects or something like that because it's just easier to carry those and to not have to carry around different heads, different cabs, different pedals, and to be able to just streamline your set. So it's tailor made, like everything is set almost to a grid. And so at that point, it just, I think, streamlines everything and allows everyone to kind of not have to rely on a sound person because everything has already been pre-mixed and ready to go.
Well, I thought it was a lot of fun, too, that this being the last show on the tour, they pretty much just, went bowling right after the show.
Scott bowling?
Walked across. No, this was a situation where we were in good company, and there was bowling, but there was no Scott bowling. So that just needs to be, front and center on that. But yeah, no, it was definitely cool. Very cool, down to earth guys. It was fun talking to Stefano before I got to go to the show to kind of establish that relationship, and we talked about a lot of fun stuff, horror movies, what they're inspired by. Something that I always try to raise a little bit of death metal awareness with people. You look at a band like Aborted and you look at their imagery and their artwork and stuff, and it's you kind of have to look at it and realize that, dude, we're all just nerds that love 80s horror films. And that's how you get these type of extreme visuals and lyrics and stuff. And, just talking to these guys, person to person, you really get a huge sense of that, of dude, we're just out here doing fun stuff that we always imagined we could do when we were kids.
Right. No, I kind of enjoyed the chat. It kind of meandered a little bit, and I wasn't exactly sure where it was going to go at times, but I think that was kind of the fun thing of, part of that is a bit, I think, to the language barrier a little bit, because you can kind of tell Stefano was at times trying to find the right word that he's looking for.
Yeah, and I don't always ask questions either that are the generic. I think I threw in how's the tour going and all that stuff, but me, it's no, let's talk about horror movies, or I want to know what it was like coming into an already established band like this. But the interesting thing too is that Stefano not only played bass for Aborted at that show, but there was another band on the bill from Italy called Hideous Divinity, and he played bass for them as well. And they put on, just as energetic of a set as Aborted. I was kind of wondering how dude was even standing after that first set, much less the second one, which was longer. It was kind of all right, here you go, and now here's bonus round. But the community out there was a lot of fun. The venue was cool. There was a bowling alley next door. It was a lot of fun, and probably the most fun I've had at a death metal show in a long time. Whereas at a lot of death metal shows, you just have a bunch of bands up there that take themselves way too seriously.
And speaking of getting serious, let's get into Dan's conversation with Stefano of Aborted, and we'll talk to you afterwards.
So here we go.
Yeah, let me open up my beer here real quick and get kicked.
Yeah. Take your time. I'm just walking by some very interestingly colorful ducks right here.
Oh, so,
yeah? I think that's a Florida thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's full of ducks. Anyway.
Yeah, I haven't been to Florida in several years, but it's the best place. It's the best place for metal, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. The whole the Tampa scene, and, all those albums recorded, the Florida death metal scene. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It should be a solid show tonight anyway, so everything looks pretty sick.
I have the pleasure this evening of speaking with Stefano Franceschini from the band Aborted. He plays bass, and you've been with the band since 2016, correct?
That's very correct. Yeah, I joined them summer 2016, during the usual European festival run.
Okay. So if you don't mind me getting personal, what was that like, jumping in with an established band like Aborted?
Well, that was kind of a dream coming true, because I've always been a fan of the band, and when I got so I posted this YouTube cover a while ago of the song Necrotic Manifesto, and a couple of years later I got the call from Aborted. So bringing a few issue with the bass player. So looking for a new one. Would you like to join for a few shows and see what's up? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And after like a couple of shows, they let me join permanently the band, and I was really stoked. So yeah.
Yeah, I bet it had to have been a lot of fun, especially for a band that's been around for, I mean, shoot, what are we coming on 24 years now?
Yeah, like the band like officially formed. I think in 95. Yeah, you're correct, 24, and the first release like 99. So this is also sort of a 20th anniversary since the first album, and it feels very good. I mean, when I joined the guys, and especially Sven, and then they all have like a very like clear vision of what it's like to be in a band and what it means to plan stuff and schedule stuff ahead, and so I found myself involved in this very like committed team where hard work always pays off, and plus the guys were super nice like since the beginning, and everything was super easy and got even better with time. So yeah.
Except for the playing, I wouldn't consider Aborted's music to be super easy.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. When I was asked to learn like a 90-minute set almost like in a few days, I was like, yeah, sure. But that was fun. Yeah. It's very fun to play like the songs, both the like old school stuff and the like new, slightly more technical songs. It's very fun to play.
Well, and that's one thing I noticed going through the discography a couple months ago for the other podcast was that Aborted has this really interesting sound in that it is equally brutal and extreme, but also has a really good sense of melody to it. Some of the guitar solos and stuff are just very it's melodic, but it's not like, kick back and feel good melodic. And I guess I'm wondering, and we'll talk, more specifically on Terrorvision, is that one's actually my favorite. After we went through all of it, I was like, yeah, the new album's the best one. So
thank you so much. No, I totally agree with what you say, like, because you must definitely play Aborted, and it's one of the most kind of extreme sounding bands, especially when it comes to drumming, tempo, vocals, and that kind of stuff. But we also try and leave a little bit of room for melody. But again, like you said, because you kind of pictured it perfectly, not like a very cheap or mainstream melody, but always trying to fit some kind of, like death metal, like style. And especially with Terrorvision, like most of the songs are written by Cam Bedini, our drummer. Because he also plays guitar and pretty well. So I hate that guy in a good way. So yeah, we were trying. Oh, it is insane. Anyway, so back to Terrorvision, we released Retrogore like a few years ago, and before that, Necrotic Manifesto. And then, as you can see, like the last 2-3 albums were very like straightforward, extreme in a way, and already with Retrogore, the guys were trying to like if you take the song Retrogore by itself with the melodic breakdown, trying to explore a different feel. But with Terrorvision, we were like, let's try and go into that direction a little more deeply, and then you get songs like Exquisite Communist Drama or like Deep Red, which is a lot kind of catchy but also like very heavy. We try to combine a lot of different styles, but we're like, okay, we should do this, like plan it perfectly, because when you write music you can't really control inspiration and stuff like that. But we definitely had some stuff in mind, and like you said, hopefully we kind of accomplished that.
Yeah, no, and that's what's enjoyable about it for me. And I guess one of the questions I had, and you may have already answered this, but what do you kind of go into it with the mindset of like, okay, obviously this is going to be super heavy, but it needs to be melodic and kind of fun too at the same time. How do you balance that? Either you just get so heavy that it just turns into a wall of noise, or you get so melodic that it like almost stops being metal at some point.
Oh no, totally. Yeah. There were like a few demos were like, maybe not this time, like, because you pretty much get yourself caught in the process of writing, and so like I said, you don't really like put a break on your like inspiration kind of some writing flow, if you let me call it that way. So definitely a few guidelines beforehand are always helpful, because we always try to have, okay, so this couple songs should be kind of like cool to play live, so people can headbang to, but at the same time we don't really want to have like either too much pressure or like barriers and where we must fit our sound or genre. So we pretty much like let it go. So yeah, like heavy for sure, because I mean the band's trademark has always been like that. And since I mean the first album, but also with like Engineering the Dead or Gormageddon, and so like we kind of crafted our sound through the years with this death grind, melodic at sometimes kind of style. So we try to with Terrorvision have each single identity of Aborted at once. So you have the heavy, you have the like atmospheric 5e part, like Vespertine Decay, for example, but you also have some melodic stuff and or grind, like straight up grind, like somewhere also Grima from Cytotoxin is doing guest vocals, or Hordover Macabre. So it's like a mix of everything. We try to balance it, and definitely with the help of our sound engineer, it all sounds very like balanced and unique in its own. So we try to do stuff differently this time, and yeah, definitely kind of step up the songwriting game, kind of.
Well, one of the things I like about Aborted too is just the cover artwork on each album. Is, I mean, when I saw the cover for Terrorvision, I was like, oh my god, I wanted that on my wall. It's just because it's just so ridiculous, in a good way.
Thank you. Thanks so much. No, I get it. It's so colorful, because also one of the themes like of the album is it's definitely like a war pun on the 80s movie, but like sometimes people are like, no, is the album based on the 80s horror B movie, and that's just like very loose reference, because the album actually talks about something different. But the band, if you know the band, like we're all pretty much into 80s stuff, so games, horror movies, and have that kind of like artwork reflect this kind of interest that we have, that we all share in the band, was the goal. And so I get it when you look at the artwork, there's so many colors, and you're like, oh, yeah, I want this as a flag on my wall. that was pretty much our goal. So thank you for that.
Yeah, saying it was inspired by 80s stuff, retro. I guess that was the whole purpose behind the retro gore.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
idea.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, even the lyrics and the songs. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun too. Just going through that album, and I remember saying, on my other podcast, that I was just like, yeah, then the album's called Retro Gore, but it doesn't sound retro, like it sounds new, and but once I started looking at the artwork, I was like, okay.
Yeah, but it evens out. Like you have the title, but also the music and the sound, which is very modern in a way, but still brutal. So yeah, we try to do that for sure.
So what horror movies from the 80s do you think would be the most complimentary to the Aborted sound?
So Sven is definitely a big fan of Hellraiser, and I'm with him on this. I really love, especially like the first two. Mm-hmm. We also like pretty much Reanimator and the old Nightmare franchise.
Okay.
So like the classics, pretty much slasher movies and body horror movies. So also, for example, like Cronenberg, We really did the Fly, the 1986 version.
Oh my God, that movie was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I really love Videodrome, for example. So like the whole New Flesh, prophecy, transformation of the body. So yeah, that's the stuff we all really love. And these things, like spanning from 80 to 89, that definitely, I think that's definitely the best age for. Best decade for horror movies for sure. So yeah, those be the titles really love.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I'm looking at my shelf here. I've got a lot of those movies on VHS still. I won't buy the DVD. And
yeah, the old good old VHS.
Yeah, well, that's how you could back in the day.
So
that's how you could only see those movies, is you'd have to go to a video store.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you just you would record it on when they would play and on TV, and you get the MPVHS, the MTVHS ready, so just to record it on it for sure, or like those bootleg stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, late night cable and stuff like that.
Before that.
I think that, for me, and I don't know if this is true for you, but that was definitely my attraction to death metal as a genre was. A lot of those 80s slasher movies, and even some of the old video games, like Castlevania and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, totally. Like the way I got into death metal, I'm kind of thankful to my older brothers, because they used to have a death metal band. So I grew up in this music oriented family. When I was a kid, I was already listening to heavy metal, Metallica, Megadeth. So the next step was kind of facilitated by this heavy metal racing process, and I got into the classics, the D side or Old Death. When I was a teenager, Morbid Angel for sure. Like Altars of Madness, probably my favorite album.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, that's how I got into death metal. But yeah, for sure, movies definitely help with the transition to it's usually like that. And people start with rock, heavy, some lighter stuff, and then so it's easier for them to go through maybe Slayer, which is faster. That's also what I did, and then finally step into death metal and get more and more extreme they please. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think death metal is? Obviously, death metal has changed. I mean, what do you think about death metal now in 2019 versus some of those old releases like you mentioned, like your Scream Bloody Gore and Possessed and Morbid Angel. Do you think that death metal? I mean, I know that's classic, but do you think death metal's gotten better, or do you think it kind of just was best back in the late 80s, early 90s?
It definitely got different. And I think also with modern age, like a new technology and social media, there's been a lot of newer bands. And by newer, I don't really necessarily mean underground, but it changed from the golden age, the 90-91 era, where any death metal band, both European or American, would release milestones or legendary albums. It got different because now there's also a lot more contamination. You have blackened death metal, you have technical death metal, you have straight up brutal, you have lots of different styles of grind. You also have deathcore. So there's a lot to choose from. And to me, this is all pretty good because you have a lot of bands to listen to. I'm still a fan of the classic death metal. Like I told you, I grew up listening to Altars of Madness and Once Upon a Cross, or older Suffocation. My favorite word by them, by the way, is the Despise the Sun EP. I think that's one of the best brutal releases ever. Older Cannibal Corpse. I mean, even modern Cannibal Corpse is sick. So I'm still a fan of that kind of genre. But to me, death metal now is alive more than ever. Like I said, there's a lot of bands growing, getting bigger, a lot of tours. So I think that's definitely good for the scene.
Yeah, definitely, and it's interesting too. I don't know if you've known. I noticed this a couple weeks ago. I went and saw Cannibal Corpse play, and it was funny to me how
the Decibel tour.
No, it was probably longer before that. They were with oh my god, I can't believe I forgot they were with Hate Eternal. So it was the last tour they did.
Oh yeah, Arms Way, Hate Eternal, and Cannibal Corpse. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually the last. It was like literally a couple of days before Pat O'Brien had.
Yeah,
had his
yeah.
I thought that was so weird because I saw him and everything. It was all good. They put on a great show and everything. As they always do.
I know, that sucks.
I did a read about that 2 days later. I was like, oh wow, that's
Yeah, we all were like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, that's. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully get some help.
Oh yeah, totally. I wish they got like all the best, because with my other band, the Full Sound Tour now, He Does Divinity, we got to tour with them in Europe, supporting them and Crisian, and all of the Cannibal Corpse guys are like the sweetest people I ever met, and like reading the news that something like that happened to him, you're like, what the fuck? Like it's so sad, and like you said, I definitely hope the guys gets all the help he needs, like both legally and most importantly, I guess, emotionally. But yeah, I wish him all the best for sure.
Yeah. But what I was saying with them is how I noticed there were so many so many younger people there, like younger metal fans that had never really listened to stuff like Cannibal Corpse, and it's just so strange because when you look at death metal, I mean, even talking about Aborted being 25 years old and Cannibal Corpse being even older than that, death metal is almost like what you would consider classic rock now, except for the fact that it was so underground that when people hear it now, they still see it as this new thing.
If you think of first Morbid Angel album is as old as I Am, Scream Bloody Gore is 32 years now, so it's definitely been an age now, like covering 3 decades. And like you said, you see all those younger kids because maybe they're those metalhead sons and daughters that grew up listening to that stuff. So now you see now those dads, like those families that bring their kids to the show, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So like this, just to keep this very brief, we're doing this VIP thing, and sometimes we have like people that have coming to the meet and greet stuff and bringing their kids, and I think that's the coolest thing ever. Like having your dad like bring you to a death metal show and be like making him like relive all those moments. I think that's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's cool, and the best case scenario, the newer generation of kids grow up learning, hearing bands that can actually play. Is one of the biggest things.
Absolutely.
I got to do something different with my kids though. Every time I play anything, they just kind of roll their eyes. Like, Dad's listening to his Halloween music again.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's still time, so I'm pretty positive they would change their mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you how your Hell Over North America tour is going. I know you guys are in Florida tonight, and it looks like you're in Florida tonight and tomorrow.
Yes, yeah. We've been so we're playing Florida after a while, because it had up been forever. Every time the band would announce a North American tour, you would see like all those disappointed fans like, why didn't you guys come to Florida? And they were like, we'd love to, but the writing just didn't allowed us to do so. So finally we're here, and the tour is I'm honest, like it's been a blast so far. Everything's going pretty smooth, and all the bands are sick, and especially we had this tour in Europe, which was a hell of a Europe tour. So we toured with Chris Upton that I did like a few weeks before this started, and things were going great. Like most of the European shows were sold out. So we're like, okay, let's try and bring this to the US, because I think like fans deserve this, and we all enjoyed each other very much. So there we go. We ran the tour, and fans have been sick. Like all shows have been very, very good. Like all bands have been killing it. Like even the supports that we got on a few shows on this tour. Like I can't really complain. It's definitely one of the best tours I've done so far. So like old people, like old parties involved in the tour are happy. So
awesome.
That's a good thing.
Very cool. Yeah, we is there any difference that you notice between European fans and American fans?
Kinda. It's one of those things that are pretty hard to explain or describe, but I've noticed that American fans have like not more supported than Europeans, because that wouldn't like do justice to European fans, but they kind of seem more into it. I don't know, like it's maybe just like a first impression kind of thing, but like you see like it's kind of in the blood, like that they like to hang a little more with the band, and it's kind of more of a family thing. I don't know, I might be wrong, but that's how I feel it was. Maybe some European fans are equally into the genre, but maybe they don't show it like, like physically speaking, like personally speaking, maybe a little more introvert or shy. I don't know. That's what I get.
In America, we're pretty loud and emotional.
Well, I'm Italian, so I definitely know what that means.
Yeah, and yeah, it's one of those things too. I think it might be that it's almost the novelty of having Aborted, playing in your town. Whereas I would imagine seeing Aborted in Europe is probably a little bit easier.
A little bit, totally. And the whole package is full of, all the bands are non-American, because Aborted is like technically from Belgium, even though 3 of the guys in the band are from the United States.
Yeah.
Benighted is French, He Does Divinity are Italian, and Kurtopsy, of course, is Canadian. So to see all of this package coming at once to your state, to your city, definitely would make any fan stoked. So yeah, this is probably what I get the most. Like being in touch with the fans. Also, I think like the venues themselves kind of make it easier to have this like closer, kind of relation with the fans, because like European venues are kind of like some of them are like mazes where you get kind of lost. You have the backstage, this bar, and the separate area. Well, the venues here in the United States are kind of, like there's the stage, and then there's the floor, and once you're done, you hang out like by the merch corner, the merch booth, and all the fans are there, like wanting to take pictures, and that's definitely one of the coolest moments of the show, where you get to like enjoy a little bit your time other than traveling and playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. It looks like you guys are going to be in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the 20th, which is the
20th. Yeah, the last show of the tour, right before Easter, if I'm not wrong.
Right. Yeah, actually, it looks like that's a Saturday, so I may actually be able to make that. It'll be about a 3-hour drive for me, but if I can, I'll for sure come up and say hello.
Let us know. We definitely hook you up with that, and that'd be sick if you can make it. Totally.
Well, in kind of wrapping up, what do we have coming up after the tour? Is there plans for new music? I know Terrorvision just came out last year, but any plans for new music or any tours that you're allowed to tell us about?
Yes. So we have this like European shows. We have a few festivals coming up in the next 2-3 months. We have Brewtallyspeaking, like, and some other big European festivals and off shows. We're working on a European tour, which probably will be announced kind of soonish, I expect, but we'll see. And also regarding music, I don't know about like officially releasing stuff, but we're definitely working on something, because we kind of never stop writing, because when you feel like you have something that you might reckon as good music, you just like put it there and see what's up. You might want to use it as like a bonus track or an EP or for a future album. So we're definitely working on something. Yeah, we'll see.
Very cool. So I guess in wrapping up, where can people find Aborted online? Find out tour dates, all that good stuff.
Oh, definitely on a Facebook page. So I think it should be facebook.com/abortedofficial, but just look up Aborted on Facebook or Instagram. So we're kind of active on social media, Twitter as well, and I think generally speaking on all metal media outlets out there. But yeah, Facebook would be probably the most like reliable source of information for all the fans out there that want to know a little more about the band.
Very cool. I appreciate you taking the time out before a show to have a chat with me. I've been pretty excited about this chat because just after listening to the band's whole discography, I was like, oh man, I definitely need to. I definitely have questions,
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, I appreciate the interview and the time like you did to talk to us. So all cool. Really appreciate that.
So that was my chat with Stefano, bass player for Aborted. We had a very fun, nerdy conversation about death metal and horror movies, and I don't regret it, and I want to do it again.
It was interesting. We've had a lot of international flavor on this show as of late, as far as some of the interviews we've gotten done, and I think it's kind of cool. I feel like we're kind of hitting this interesting stride of getting more diversity as far as what we have on this show. And this episode is more attributed to the fact that, this is your wheelhouse. You just did an Aborted episode on discography discussion. So if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, well, and one thing I wanted to ask, specifically with them being an international band, and it's kind of a theory that we've been trying to piece together over time. We've asked American bands what it's like to play in Europe versus European bands to come play in America. What is the difference in fan approach? And he had a pretty interesting answer to that, saying that like maybe it's almost like American audiences are a little bit more like emotional, like and just out in front and willing to just kind of throw themselves out there at you, whereas in Europe people are a little bit more. I don't think it was shy necessarily, but just a little bit more reserved.
Absolutely.
Which I think that's just interesting with the culture, because like in America, it's like. To an American, the best thing that you can do is you go to a show, you like the band, you buy their merch, you guys shake hands, and you get to say hi to everybody in the band before you leave.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't think of a different experience. Like when Dan did this conversation, I was at the Acacia Strain Knock Loose show, and I was in the van with Brian from Knock Loose, so a nice cramped hot van, and then Vincent and Tom and I from Acacia Strain went over to a coffee shop and had a cup of coffee and did our interview. And then when Dan actually was at the show last night, I drove all the way to Detroit to interview Maddie Mullins from Memphis Mayfire, and then drove all the way back home. So Dan and I basically had the exact same experiences, but completely different. And I think it's really interesting that the differences in what we went through and the processes we kind of went through to get some of these interviews.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, especially for me because Aborted is a band that I've kind of more recently become a fan of. Before we did the discography discussion on Aborted, I was kind of familiar, but I wasn't like a hardcore fan. And that's the benefit of that show, is a lot of the time it gives me an excuse to check out a band like 100%. And this was definitely the case where I was like, oh, wow, these guys are great. I actually like them more than some of the other death metal bands we've covered. And so then to just immediately get to do the interview and then immediately go to a show, like I just couldn't, I definitely couldn't have asked for a better setup on all that. So to me, 4 hours was nothing, to drive.
Yeah, if I hadn't already made a trip to Detroit earlier in the week, I would feel the same way, but...
Now, next time I'm not going to schedule a concert trip like right in the middle of a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
That definitely took its toll on me.
But at one point in the interview, you had talked about how you were cracking open a beer. Speaking of, basically we had one of our first really nice summer days. It reached up into the 70s today. And as such, after the Emery House show that we had here, someone left a summer shandy. So it felt appropriate to crack one open. And it's a Leinekugel, for those that aren't familiar with it. It's, lemony flavored. It's refreshing. And it's just a good sipping beer, especially after, hot day. Drink one. Tastes good. Dan, what are you drinking?
Oh, well, right now I'm just trying to get my sinuses under control, so I'm drinking lemon juice and water.
So a non-alcoholic shandy.
Yes, no sugar, nothing smooth about it. Just it burns all the badness out of my nose and throat.
Oh, it sounds like a perfect drink for the Aborted episode.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about as death metal of a drink as you can get. besides just like a cup of gore, you know.
Slowly and kind of wrapping up, where can we find the band, Dan?
Oh, well, you can find these guys pretty much anywhere. You can find them on Facebook under Aborted Official. You can find them on Instagram at Aborted Metal. You can find them on Twitter also at Aborted Metal. So, as I frequently say, if you can't find this band, it's your fault.
It's true.
Because they are all over the place and very good at getting back to you on messages. They've got a really cool merch store set up there on pretty much all their social medias, which is smart. I mean, how many times have you seen a band that you're like, oh, cool, I wonder where I can get a shirt, and you can't find any merch information anywhere? And in this case, you haven't experienced that?
Not really.
I listen to a lot more underground bands. There's a reason why they stay underground.
There's probably that.
Nobody can buy their shirts, but if you want an Aborted shirt, this would be a good place to get one.
If you would like to keep up with Metal Nexus, you can find them at metalnexus.net, Metal Nexus on Facebook, Instagram at metal.nexus, and Twitter at metal_nexus. Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me on the discography discussion page at discussmetal.com. You can find me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. You can find me on Twitter at discussmetaldan. That's about it. I mean, I'm pretty much on the interwebs.
And if you'd like to keep up with all things this podcast, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BrewSpeakPod. Go to the YouTube channel. We have some videos coming up soon of these interviews that we've been doing in person. And if you would like to email us, you can email us at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. For the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
We will talk to you all next time.